Well, thank you so much, Howard. Great to be with you all. I'm glad that you introduced my better half and the three girls that get more votes than I do out there on the campaign trail. So I know you can certainly appreciate that, but I'm glad to have them with us today. We got a jam-packed day today. We're leaving here right when we finish, heading to Pickens County for a big event they have, and then we have another event in Habersham County. So we are working hard every day to be your nominee and to be your next governor. And I think some of the things that Howard said, first of all, I know he's giving me a hard time about not dressing up, but at least I didn't bring my big truck, my chainsaw, and I left my gun out in our car. But I appreciate what Howard said, because there's a lot of things being said right now about how well I've not done my job over the years. But I would tell you to ask any Georgian that we've worked with, not that we've had issues and had things happen, and nobody's perfect in state government when you're running an agency with 250 people. But we have done great things in the office. We've streamlined it. We've made it more efficient. We've always figured out ways to do things, especially during the recession, without asking for more money, which is what Republicans talk about all the time. You know, small, more efficient government, putting Georgians first ahead of the special interest. And I think what Howard said was very important. We haven't always agreed on the issues, but even when I didn't agree on the issues, he knew where I stand. He knew that in a professional way, and I didn't do the right thing just because it was good politically. I did what you all put me there to do, and that was to be a principled person that represents you in the Secretary of State's office, that will go against the grain sometimes when I need to. And when you do that, you get political defeats. But you know what? You didn't send me up there to be a Secretary of State that's going to be a go-along, get-along guy. Because if I was like that, I would have backed down to Stacey Abrams and the liberals that were attacking us during the Donald Trump election, calling me a voter suppressor, you know, calling me incompetent, you know, saying all these bad things, suing us, all these liberal groups from all over the country suing us. I would have just folded up and said, well, we don't need to fight that fight. Because everybody else was busy. They were out on the campaign trail. We're on that island up there fighting that fight. But I fought that fight because you put me there, because I told you that I would make sure we have secure, accessible, fair elections when I was running to be Secretary of State. And that's exactly what I've done, and that is exactly what we have in the state of Georgia. It's never been easier to participate in the process, to register to vote. We have 800,000 more people on the voter rolls now than we did in 2010 when I got there. But our elections are more secure too, because I sued the Obama Justice Department and Eric Holder, who's suing us again now, to make sure we implement our citizenship check when we register people to vote. Now the left thinks that's crazy that we would check someone's citizenship before we register to vote. I do not, and I know you don't either. And we sued them twice and won on that to implement that. I've fought hard to protect our common sense photo ID law that makes sure that we have those secure elections. I've fought them when they've sued us leading up to elections and sued county government and county registrars saying they weren't registering people to vote, making this political hay of that, out of that right before the election. Well, you know what? When we get a voter registration form, or the county rather does, and it has an Alabama address on there, we're not going to register that person to vote in Georgia. And those people were complaining about that. But that's why we won on all 10 counts in court, even when they wanted us to settle beforehand that would have been favorable for us. But I did not do it because it was not the right thing to do. We went to court because I knew our office and the county registrars were working their tail off to get folks registered as long as they met the requirements. And we wanted to prove that, and we did. So when you think about who you're going to vote for, starting now, absentee July 2nd, advanced in-person voting, or on July 24th, I hope you will vote for somebody that will stand up and do the right thing, even when no one's watching, to put Georgians first ahead of the special interest. And I'd like to ask for your vote in this coming runoff. Now let me just give you a quick update of where we are on the campaign trail. Things are going great. As you all know, I know there's many people in this room that may have been supporting other candidates leading up to the May 22nd primary. We were very fortunate, and it's because we ran a disciplined campaign and held our chips to the end, and we surged right before the May election and finished in a strong second place. But what was even more interesting that night was the guy that was supposed to win without a runoff finished under 40%. And then 2 weeks after the runoff, our surge continued, and our latest polling shows that this race is basically tied. It's a statistical dead heat, only a handful of undecided people. So we've got the momentum. Our ground game is in full force, and we are working hard literally 24/7 to be your nominee. And we need your help. And I want to thank all those that have joined us from the other camps. We've got a lot of good ones. Brooks Fletcher is here. He's been with me the whole time. But Wesley Ross is now working for us. He was the grassroots coordinator for Hunter Hill's campaign. We're glad to have Wesley on board. He's bringing a lot of the Hill folks with us. We had to have a lot of Tippins, a lot of Williams people coming our way as well. And that's why we're going to win this runoff. Because that message of putting Georgians first over the special interests is resonating out there. And that's what I want to talk about today. I've got a record of being a fed up small business owner for a very long time before I ever started my journey, I guess you could say, into politics. I've been in the private sector over a decade with a wife and a young family, struggling to survive, starting a business with literally a pickup truck and a shovel. Went on to get involved in many other things besides my construction company, a stone business, timber farm. I've been involved in manufacturing in rural parts of our state. And look, it is not easy out there. And it's still not for a lot of people. And that's why we need a governor that is going to do what they say, that will get in office and cut regulations, cut taxes, make government smaller. And that's what I did in the legislature. Went home for 3 years. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me was being in government and getting out. Because I was like you all, or a lot of you, watching from the outside in, how government works, how we had control of Washington, D.C. as Republicans back in the mid-2000s through 2008. And the people that had made all those promises that were up there, they didn't do what they said. Right. They didn't fulfill their promises. Conservatives were disappointed. They stayed at home, and we ended up getting Barack Obama as our president. And I don't have to go through that 8 years with you all because you know what happened. Thankfully, we have gotten the majorities again, and we have a Republican president. And happy birthday, happy late birthday to Donald J. Trump. He had a great week on his birthday, by the way, and I appreciate him fighting hard for what he told people he would do on the campaign trail. And that is exactly what we need to do as elected officials, is we need to fulfill our promises. And I have a record of doing that. I did it in the Secretary of State's office. I ran on streamlining the agency, and as Howard talked about, we have streamlined literally every IT system that we have, from voter registration, our corporate filing system, all of our IT down in Macon where we license 500,000 people. We are processing licensing times and corporate registrations faster than we ever have. We privatized part of our voter registration system. We have better cybersecurity, a better system that's easier for the counties to use, and it has saved millions of your tax dollars and continues to do that the longer we use it. So I have a record of doing what I say. I talked to you earlier about fighting to make sure we have secure, accessible, fair elections and what all I have done to protect that. And that is why you can count on me as your governor to do exactly what I've been talking about for 14 or 15 months now. And that is my conservative 4-point plan. Making Georgia #1 for small business by taking that chainsaw that was in the back of my truck and cutting government regulations all throughout state government to make us the #1 state in the country for small business, building off what Governor Deal and Howard and many other people, including our agency, have done to make Georgia #1 for business. And that's been great for a lot of large corporate folks. But as I've traveled to all 159 counties, the only person in the governor's race to ever do that before, I have seen that small business people in a lot of areas of our state are still struggling out there. Their health care costs are going up, their margins are going down, their wages are stagnant, there's no investment in their community, the tax base is stagnant or dropping, there's no opportunity, so their kids and their grandkids, people's kids and grandkids are having to move away to go find a job. It shouldn't be that way in Georgia, and I will be a governor that's going to focus on that. We've also got to have a governor that's going to completely reform how state government spends, taxes, and operates. And we've done a great job over the years, I think, in many ways. But I believe that we should implement a spending cap that's tied to population and inflation so that we control state spending, we don't overspend in good times, it helps us remain strong and keep a AAA bond rating in the bad times, and then we can have real tax reform that helps lower the tax rates, lowers the state income tax, increases deductions, whatever it is, as long as it's broad-based and helps everybody, especially working Georgians and Georgia families. And I appreciate Howard's leadership, Governor Deal's leadership, lowering the state income tax this year, but we can thank Donald Trump for getting that started by getting the tax reform passed at the federal level. My opponent in the runoff opened his campaign on cutting $100 million of taxes in the first 90 days, which in a $26 billion state budget and over $40 billion federal budget, it ain't a whole lot. And my thing is, if he's doing this now, why didn't he do it last year when times are good, or the year before? And now, over a year later, after the legislature passes the tax cut, and again, I'm grateful for that, but he's now taking credit for the largest tax cut in Georgia history. Well, we should give credit where credit's due, and that is to our president and our Republicans in Congress for doing what they said they would do and cutting taxes on us that created a windfall here that allowed Governor Deal and the legislature to do the right thing, and I applaud them for that. But that's something to keep in mind in the future. I believe if we implement the spending cap, we can budget conservatively, fund the things that we properly should have, that we should do, like public education, health care, public safety, infrastructure, transportation, and so on, and have real tax reform. I mentioned those working Georgians that are out there in Georgia families in all areas of our state that are still struggling. That is why I have talked from day one about strengthening rural Georgia. And I know, right here in this restaurant, we're not sitting in the middle of rural Georgia. But I know that very close to here, there's a lot of parts of our state that don't have good economic opportunity. They don't have access to high-speed internet. They don't have access to telemedicine and other things. And that is why, as governor, I'm going to implement my plan to strengthen rural Georgia that's on our website, along with other detailed plans like adoption reform, education reform, transportation plans, and public safety as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I would encourage you to look at that. I will be a governor for all of Georgia. It is not healthy for us just to have our metro areas growing. I'll be a governor that will tackle those problems head on when you think about transportation and infrastructure in our metro areas and keeping a good economy so we continue to provide good jobs and higher paying jobs. But we've also got to focus on other parts of the state as well. That will be good for our overall economy. But the last thing is the most important, and I've said it several times already today. That is, we need a nominee and a governor that will put Georgians first ahead of the special interest. And that is why I have been talking about that as the fourth point of my plan since day one. And we have plans to do just that, besides doing the right thing when nobody's watching. But public safety reform, building off the great things that the governor and the legislature's done with criminal justice reform to make sure that we're keeping our families safe. As a father of 3 teenage daughters, I worry about that a lot more than I should. Gangs, drugs, Donald Trump's federal prosecutors talking in public about how Georgia has become a distribution hub to the Mexican drug cartel. That is their words, not mine. State law enforcement corroborating the same thing, saying that we have become the Miamis of the 80s. And not a lot of people are talking about that. But that is why I developed early on, and I caught a lot of criticism about this, our plan to track and deport criminal illegals that are causing these crimes, creating a database where local law enforcement, state law enforcement, federal law enforcement, prosecutors, corrections, and everybody you can tear down those silos where they can communicate. We've got a database of who these people are, the crimes they're committing, where they're committing them, so we can better track them, and when we get a hold of them, we can either lock them up or immediately deport them. So that needs to be done. Also, stopping and dismantling gangs. And I know I have heard from people in Paulding County that have complained because DA Vic Reynolds has done such a good job with street gangs in Cobb County, it's driven a lot of them to Paulding and other surrounding counties. Well, my plan is to stop and dismantle street gangs and drive them from Georgia to Alabama and Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida, and so on, let them deal with them. Because it is a big problem in our state. It's causing other problems like sex trafficking and many other things out there that are creating havoc in our neighborhoods, besides getting our kids and our young people shot up. And that's why when the legislature developed the street gang database over 8 years ago, they called it a crisis at the time. The problem was it's never been properly funded to get the database up and running, and I will do that as governor. I will also work with the legislature to give the Attorney General more prosecutorial jurisdiction statewide to go after gangs that'll help help partner with the local governments. We'll create a task force of law enforcement and prosecutors that, when asked, we can work with local governments, local sheriff's department, police, whoever it is, to help train them if they ask, and also to help prosecute. That's been a problem around our state, that some communities don't have those resources or the know-how to go after these gangs. So we will do that. And all of these things, track and deport and stop and dismantle, allow us to better work with our federal partners and President Trump. So I hope you guys will take a look at that, because we got to keep our families safe if we're going to remain the #1 state in the country for business and the #1 state for small business. So I would just ask you guys again, if you're not with us, please join us. We would love to have your vote, your support, your help. We got to work hard. We are running, even though our polling showing this race is a dead heat, we are running like we're 10 points behind. And that's why we're going to win on July 24th. But we need more of you to join us. Help us phone bank, walk neighborhoods, take a sign when you leave, talk to your friends and neighbors, make sure they go vote. This is going to be in the middle of the summer. It's going to be hot. People are going to the beach. Just get them to go vote. Either get them to go July 2nd before they leave for the 4th holiday. Make sure they vote when they come back. Whatever it is, any help you can give us, we'd appreciate it. You can see Wesley. If you're interested in volunteering, we got several of our interns here this morning. I want to thank them for their hard work and support. They are really working hard out there for us. But one thing I will tell you, however hard you all work for me, you will not outwork me. I will be a candidate you can be proud of that will work hard, and I'll also be a nominee that can beat Stacey Abrams in November, because I have taken her on before, and I beat her and her liberal friends, and I'm not afraid to stand up for our values, because we should never back down from what we believe in. Advocating for the Second Amendment, standing up for religious freedom, the First and Second Amendments, as was mentioned earlier. And I have a record of doing that as a true conservative, and I also have a record of doing that when nobody else was there with me, because I told you I would. And that's the most important thing that I think people need to look at in this race. So thank you for having me this morning. I don't know if we're a stance here. We're going to take questions.
You have to. You got time?
I can take a few, I think, real quick. Yes, sir.
Kemp, it's nice to meet you this morning. You can meet my daughter before you leave. She diagnosed with epilepsy at 4 months old. Through 7 failed medications, 6 trips via helicopter to try to drive. We finally found a product that will help. It's called cannabis oil. I know a lot of you are talking about the CBD. My daughter can't take CBD. It provokes more seizures. She is taking straight THC right now, which is less than 5%, which the law allows. but it's illegal to get it here. I get it. I'm not gonna say how I get it, but I get it here. I don't ask any questions, but this is acceptable to drying up. Will you be able to help us have an in-state growing cultivation so that our children and citizens of this state, which just have been passed with PTSD and attractive pain, will also have the opioid epidemic? Will you help us get a growing cultivation model here?
Well, let me just say this. I have been on the record for being against cultivation in state because I believe there's federal problems with that. There's regulatory problems that I've been told about that, but I actually got some more information on that a couple of days ago, so I've got my folks looking into that. But what I will tell you is that I'm very sympathetic to your daughter and the situation that you're in. I'm very supportive of what Representative Peake and a lot of the legislators have worked on for a long time. I talked to Micah Gravely, state representative from over this way, that's also supporting my campaign. He just came on board recently because he knows that I'm accessible. He knows I will sit down and talk with him. I know there's other people that have opposite concerns of that, but I have always been an open-minded person to learn about the issues, but I'm also not going to mislead the public because I've been told that even if there was in-state cultivation right now, in the regulatory environment that we have with the way the feds and other things are set up in the current environment with marijuana being a Schedule I drug, that's not even possible for that to happen. So, I think that's an issue that needs to be dealt with at the federal level. I wish that they would do that. I also think that we need to look and see how somebody can do more medical research, to have clinicals to find out exactly, I know the parents know what's working and what's not, but I think to sell the public, you're going to have some clinicals that do that as well. Yes, sir.
Also, too, we have, and I don't have to explain it, we have Amendment 10 to states' rights. President Trump has defunded the DEA about coming into states and shutting down medical marijuana projects. With that being said, I do believe we do need more studies other than this is working for my child, that's working for my child.
Yeah, and look, as a parent, I do not disagree with that, and I'm very sympathetic, and I'd be doing the same thing that you are.
But I guess my point being is, we're not going to be shut down by the federal government because if they're not funded, they're not going to do it for free.
Well, I understand that, but if we, if let's say state government tells you it's okay and then they change their tune, they come down and arrest you, you're going to call me and say, hey, why'd you do this? So, that's why I'm going to be transparent with the public, but I'm sympathetic and following that issue very close.
Secretary Kemp, there's been a lot of tough talk on illegal immigration, specifically criminal. My question is, are you supportive of a constitutional amendment to make English the official language of government, and that driver's licenses that are being issued to illegals would be distinguishable from those that citizens have and from those that are here legally?
Well, I would hope we're not giving the driver's license to people that are here illegally.
Well, DACA recently.
Well, yeah, but I think there's a legal process, whether you like it or not, that allowed that, and that's certainly something the federal government needs to deal with. I'm 100% supportive of English being the official language, for goodness sakes. I mean, I'm all for legal immigration. I support the president's plan to build a wall. The guy campaigned on that. Americans believe in that. We need to secure our borders. That's where this all starts. But there's many other things we need to reform as well, and that's why I was the first person in the governor's race and probably one of the first people that statewide elected that came out and supported David Perdue and Tom Cotton's plan to really reform the rest of the immigration, do away with chain migration and other things, and I hope that they'll at some point deal with all those things. Yes, sir.
Sir, do you support a constitutional carry?
I do support constitutional carry. Look, I'm not only a supporter of the Second Amendment, I'm an advocate for that. And I'm not afraid to stand up to the left on that issue. It's not, for gosh sakes, if anybody saw the fallout from the liberal media on our Jake television commercial. I mean, it was unbelievable. They were giving me the hardest time. They said I was pointing a gun at the kid, and there was all these guns, and it's just like, I thought they were gonna hyperventilate. And I'm like, I can assure you, I know how to point a gun at someone. And if I need to do that, I certainly can, and I will. But that gun was not pointed at that young man. And as you know, the liberals don't have a very good sense of humor, so they didn't see the humor in that ad at all. Of course, most of them, I don't think today, as they say in Georgia, I don't think they were from around here. So I wasn't too worried about that, because conservatives got the point. They got the point that I'm going to protect my 3 daughters and my wife, and you have the right to do that in your own home. And I'm not only going to be a supporter of the Second Amendment, I'm going to be an advocate, and I'll work with anybody to continue to move our gun rights forward, not backwards. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, everyone. I'd like to emphasize something that you brought up about it being summer and being difficult to get people out for a runoff. And for myself, my observation is there's not so much of a difference between Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, whatever you want to call it, as between elected officials who are in it for their own benefit and gain and those who are in it for the public good. Whichever party, if an elected official is in it for the public good, you're not disagreeing about ultimate goals, only how do you get there. But an elected official is in it for himself, man, there's nothing you can tell him that's going to move him from that agenda. And you very clearly are one who's for the people. Now, those who are in it for themselves, representing the special interests, boy, they get their people out there. So it's real difficult to get people out when you are competing against big funded special interests that are going to get people out there, whatever it takes. Thank you.
Well, I'm just hoping that the special interests are on vacation at the beach during the election, and you all are here going to vote for me. Let me just say, I mean, I think, you know, look, everybody knows who the candidates are now. They know what the issues are. They know where we stand. I have run a positive campaign from day one, talking about myself, my record, the good and the bad of it. I'm not afraid to stand up and talk to anybody or any person about anything that I've been through, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's been in the Secretary of State's office, with my family, anything else, because that's just what you're going to get when you run for governor. But I talked about my message, my record, and what I wanted to do as governor to move our state forward the whole campaign. And the guy I'm running against in the runoff is the one that was begging everybody to let's have a clean campaign. Let's talk about the issues. Let's not attack one another. And the Tuesday after Memorial Day, that somber holiday, he started, you know, violently attacking me on all these different things, which we knew were going to come. But I can tell you this, every day I have been in elected office, I have been a small business person and a working Georgian that has had to meet payroll, that has created jobs, that's had to deal with taxes and insurance and providing for my family. And like you all, it was not easy during the 8-year Obama recession or however long it was. So I had to fight through that just like you did. And when you run a state agency that has 250 people in it, you're going to have things that happen. And there's 2 ways you can handle that. You can blame it on somebody else, or you can own it and fix it and move on and make sure it doesn't happen again. Because I can assure you, when you're governor, you're going to have tough things happen. It did to Sonny Perdue, certainly did to Governor Deal. And how you react in a tough time and how transparent you are and how you stand up and take full responsibility, I think says a lot about how you were governed. Because I don't run from problems. You know, when times got tough in my business, there was 2 things I could have done. I could throw the bank the keys and say, come get it, or I could get up and literally go to work again and hope I could just make it through that next day. And that's what our country was built on. And as tough a times as I've been through, I'm proud of that. But I believe the reason I'm getting attacked right now is because the polling is flipped in this race. And my opponent is desperate, and I am not. I'm gonna keep talking about the same issues, the same values that I have, and what I wanna do as your governor. And I'm not gonna take credit for what other people have done to do that. And that is why I would ask you to join with me. Thank y'all for having me today.